The last thing my aunt ever wrote to me was a warning. The first thing I did when I got the keys was break it. My name is Eleanor Radcliffe, and until 6 months ago, farm life was something that happened to other people. I'd spent my whole adult life in a rented apartment 200 miles from the nearest cornfield. Then a lawyer called. My great-aunt Josephine, a woman I'd met exactly twice, had left me everything: 62 acres, a farmhouse older than my grandparents, and 9 words scrawled on a piece of paper folded inside the deed. Don't open the red barn, ever. I didn't listen. Not because I was brave, because I was curious, and grief makes you stupid in ways you don't expect. Before I tell you what happened when I finally turned that key, do me a favor. Hit like on this video, subscribe if this is your first time here, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight. I read every single one of them, and knowing you're out there is honestly what makes telling this story bearable. Because this was never a story about inheriting land. It's a story about inheriting something that should have stayed buried. The drive took 4 hours longer than my GPS promised, mostly because the last 20 miles weren't really roads. They were suggestions cut through cornfields, the kind of gravel path that makes your car sound like it's chewing gravel instead of rolling over it. By the time the farmhouse came into view, the sun was already dropping behind the tree line, painting the whole property the color of a bruise. The house itself wasn't what surprised me. It was exactly what I expected from a woman who died at 83, having never married. White paint gone gray, a porch that sagged in the middle like it was tired of holding itself up, curtains yellowed from decades of sun. What surprised me was the barn. It sat maybe 200 yards behind the house, and even from that distance, even in dying light, I could see the door was painted a red, so dark it looked almost black. The kind of red you'd choose if you wanted people to look away from it rather than at it. A padlock the size of my fist hung on the latch, rusted solid. I told myself I wasn't going to think about it. I had boxes to unpack, a kitchen that smelled like mothballs and old coffee, and a bed that hadn't been slept in for at least a year, based on the dust. I made myself a cup of tea I didn't really want, just to have something warm to hold, and I went to bed early, exhausted from grief and driving and the particular loneliness of standing in a dead woman's home. I don't know what time it was when I woke up, late enough that the moon had moved fully into my window, and the first thing I noticed wasn't a sound. It was the absence of one. The crickets, which had been loud enough to annoy me when I fell asleep, had gone completely silent. Then I heard it. A low, dragging sound, rhythmic, coming from somewhere behind the house, not wind, not an animal I could name. It sounded, if I'm being honest with you, like something being pulled slowly across a wooden floor, the kind of floor a barn might have. I lay there in the dark, telling myself it was raccoons, or the house settling, or my imagination doing what imaginations do in unfamiliar places. But some old, animal part of my brain already knew better. Because the sound wasn't coming from inside the house at all. It was coming from the barn, the one that had been locked for 30 years, the one nobody was supposed to be inside. Morning has a way of making fear feel embarrassing. By the time sunlight was pouring through the kitchen window, I'd half convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing, that grief and exhaustion had turned an old house settling into something sinister. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I poured coffee, put on boots that were 2 sizes too big because they were the only ones I'd packed, and walked out to prove myself wrong. The grass between the house and the barn was still heavy with dew, and I noticed my own footprints from the day before, already softened by moisture. What I didn't expect to notice were other prints, not human, too wide for a deer, too deliberate for a raccoon, pressed deep into the mud along the barn's east wall, the wall I hadn't even walked near. I stood there longer than I want to admit, just looking at them before I made myself keep going. The padlock was still there, still rusted, still enormous, still hanging from the latch exactly the way it had been in the photos the estate lawyer sent me. For one relieved second, I thought, see, nothing happened, it's still locked. Then I looked closer. The lock hadn't been open, but it had been turned. 30 years of rust leaves a very specific pattern on old metal, a stain, a shadow, where the lock has hung still and undisturbed, and that rust pattern was facing the wrong direction. Someone, or something, had rotated that padlock on its hasp sometime in the night without ever unlocking it. I pressed my palm flat against the barn door just to feel it, and I swear to you the wood was warm. Not sun warm. It was barely 8 in the morning, and that wall hadn't seen direct light yet. It was warm like something had been leaning against it from the inside. I put my ear to the door before I could stop myself, and that's when I heard breathing. Slow, even, deliberate, the kind of breathing a person does when they know you're listening and want you to hear it. I backed away so fast I nearly fell into the mud, and I didn't stop walking until I was back in the kitchen with the door locked behind me, laughing a little at myself in that shaky, humorless way you laugh when your body is still deciding whether to be afraid. That's when I saw it, sitting on the kitchen counter where it hadn't been the night before, a small, leather-bound book, its cover soft with age, a faded ribbon marking a page near the middle. My aunt's handwriting was on the first page I opened, and the entry was dated the week she died. I hadn't even changed out of my muddy boots when I heard tires crunching up the gravel drive. Through the window, I saw an old pickup truck, more rust than paint, and an elderly man climbing out of it slower than his impatience seemed to want. He was already walking toward the porch before I opened the door, like he'd made this trip 100 times before, just never to see me. "You're Josephine's niece," he said. "Not a question." "Earl Dunmore. I farm the section east of here." He didn't offer his hand. His eyes had already moved past me into the kitchen and landed on the leather-bound book still sitting open on the counter. Something shifted in his face. Not surprise. Recognition. The specific kind that comes with dread attached to it. "Where'd you find that?" he said, and this time it wasn't gentle. I told him the truth, because I didn't have a reason not to, that it had appeared on my counter overnight, that I hadn't put it there, that I didn't understand how it got inside a locked house. Earl sat down at the kitchen table without being invited, which told me more than anything he'd said so far. His hands, I noticed, were shaking slightly as he reached out and turned the book toward himself, careful not to actually touch the pages. "Your aunt used to say that book found her, not the other way around," he said. "Same as it's found you now." I asked him what he meant, and for a long moment he just stared at the barn through my kitchen window like he was deciding how much of 30 years of silence he was willing to give up in one morning. "There was a hired hand," he finally said. "Worked Josephine's land back when her father still ran it. Man named Thomas Pruitt, good worker, quiet." Then one harvest, he wasn't quiet anymore. Started saying things, saying the barn talked to him at night. Everybody figured the heat had gotten to him, or the drink, or both. Earl's jaw tightened. Then one morning he was locked inside that barn, and nobody in this county could tell you how or who turned that key. By the time anyone worked up the courage to open it, he was gone. Not dead gone, just gone. No body, no trace, door still locked from the outside. He looked at me then, and whatever composure he'd walked in with had fully drained out of him. Josephine locked that barn the same week, and it never opened again. Not once in 30 years that I know of. He stood up so fast, the chair scraped hard against the floor. "You need to leave this place, Miss Radcliffe. Sell it, burn it, I don't care. But don't you dare go in that barn." He was almost to the door when he stopped, and without turning around, he said one more thing, quiet enough that I almost missed it. "And whatever you do, don't finish reading that book at night." He left before I could ask him why. I told myself I wasn't going to touch that book again until I understood what I was dealing with. So instead of reading it, I drove into town, a place so small it had one traffic light and a library that doubled as the county records office, run by a woman who introduced herself as Dot and seemed thrilled to have a visitor who wasn't there to pay a late fine. I asked her as casually as I could manage if she had any old newspaper archives from around 50 years back. She lit up like I'd asked about her favorite subject, pulled out a set of yellowed, brittle folders, and left me alone with decades of local history nobody else seemed to care about anymore. It took almost an hour of sneezing through dust before I found it. A single clipping, barely 4 inches of column space, dated the autumn Earl had described. The headline was almost comically small for what it described. "Local man missing. Foul play not suspected." The article named Thomas Pruitt as a farmhand employed by the Radcliffe family said he'd last been seen the evening before, and that authorities had, quote, "found no evidence of struggle or wrongdoing." That was it. No follow-up, no investigation notes. As if the county had collectively decided the story wasn't worth a second article. I asked Dot if there were more records, police reports, anything official, and her expression changed in a way that reminded me uncomfortably of Earl at my kitchen table. She told me, lowering her voice like the dead could overhear her, that the sheriff's records from that year had been lost in a flood in the 80s. When I asked which flood, she couldn't tell me one. When I checked the weather archives myself, right there on her library computer, there hadn't been a single flood reported in this county that entire decade. Someone had erased it. Deliberately, carefully, decades ago, someone had made sure Thomas Pruitt's disappearance would never be looked into by anyone who came after. I found one more thing before I left, almost by accident, tucked into a folder of unrelated land records. A hand-drawn property survey of my aunt's farm, dated the same year Pruitt vanished. The barn was marked on it, same location it sits today. Except on this map, someone had labeled it. Not barn, not storage. The label, in careful, old-fashioned handwriting, read, "Holding place." Nothing else, no explanation, just those two words, sitting on a legal document like they were the most normal thing in the world. I drove home with that image burned into my mind, and by the time the farmhouse came back into view, the sun was already low again, painting the barn that same bruised color it had worn my first night here. And sitting on my porch step, exactly where I'd left nothing that morning, was the leather-bound book, waiting for me, open to a page I hadn't read yet. I sat down on the porch step, right there in the fading light, and I read the page my aunt had left open for me, because somehow, impossibly, I understood by then that she had left it open for me. Her handwriting was shakier than in the earlier entries, the words pressed hard into the paper like she'd been afraid of forgetting them before she finished writing. "I have let them believe I locked that door to keep something in," she wrote. "It is easier that way. The truth is heavier than the town could carry. I did not lock it to keep something in. I locked it to keep my promise." Thomas did not disappear. Thomas was released, traded, if you want the honest word, for something I needed far more than I ever admitted to Earl, or the sheriff, or God. The land does not ask for blood, Eleanor. It asks for a keeper, someone who checks the lock, someone who renews the agreement every year on the same night I found it broken, someone who does not open the door, but does not run from it either. I was the keeper for 51 years. I am sorry, more than these pages can hold, that the role falls to you now, and that I did not warn you sooner, or clearer, or kinder, but you are already standing where I stood. You already heard it breathing. That means it has already chosen you back. The entry ended there, mid-page, the rest left blank, the way a task is left unfinished for the next hands to pick up. I looked up from the book toward the barn, and for the first time since I'd arrived, I didn't feel fear looking at it. I felt something closer to inheritance, the real kind, the kind that has weight and obligation stitched into it, not the kind you find in a lawyer's envelope. I don't know yet what renewing the agreement means. I don't know what waits behind that door, or what it took from Thomas Pruitt, or what it will eventually ask of me. What I know is that the breathing stopped the moment I closed the book, and that tonight, for the first time since I arrived, the crickets are loud again. I haven't opened the barn, not yet. But I understand now that I'm not the one being warned anymore. I'm the one keeping watch. I've thought a lot in the months since about what it means to inherit something. We usually think of inheritance as furniture, money, land with a fence around it, things you can hold or sell or walk away from if they become too heavy. Nobody warns you that some inheritances don't come with an exit, that some responsibilities choose you the moment you're born into the right bloodline, long before you're old enough to say no. I still don't know exactly what my aunt agreed to all those decades ago, or what it truly cost her to keep that door shut for 51 years. I don't know what renewing the agreement will require of me, or when it will ask. But I know the crickets sing every night now, the way they're supposed to. I know the barn is quiet, and I know that quiet isn't the same thing as safe. Some nights I sit on that porch step, the same one where I read her final words, and I wonder if she ever regretted saying yes to whatever this is. Her diary never says. Maybe some things are too heavy even for paper. What I do know is this: the land doesn't ask you if you're ready. It just waits to see if you'll stay. If this story kept you up a little longer than you meant to stay awake tonight, do me one favor. Hit that like button, and if you're not subscribed yet, now's the time. There are more stories like this one waiting for you, and honestly, knowing you're out there listening is what makes carrying these stories feel a little less lonely. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, check your locks.